Okay, let's unpack this. What if taxes aren't just an unavoidable burden, something you just grudgingly pay every year? But what if they're actually a powerful, well, strategic rule book, one that the wealthy learn to really master? Robert Kiyosaki, the Rich Dad Poor Dad author, he really champions this idea.
Exactly. And our mission today really is to cut through some of the noise. We want to show you how financially savvy people align what they do with government incentives, all to legally minimize their tax obligations. Think of it less like penalties and more like a system of rewards. It helps you shortcut your way to being well informed on this.
Okay, so let's dive into that fundamental difference Kiyosaki talks about, the cash flow difference. For most employees, the process feels pretty straightforward, maybe a bit limiting. You earn your income, then bam, taxes are taken out immediately. Often that's your biggest single expense right there. And then you spend whatever's left. It's like the government always gets its slice first. No questions asked.
Right. And what's fascinating here is the stark contrast with business owners and investors. Their cash flow is, well, essentially inverted. They earn income, then they strategically spend on qualified business expenses, of course. And only then do they pay taxes on what's usually a significantly reduced amount.
Okay, so the spending comes before the taxing.
Precisely. This lets them legally deduct a whole range of expenses, office supplies, maybe travel, using pre-tax dollars. So it really isn't just about how much money you make, it's truly about how much money you get to keep.
That makes sense.
Imagine this. A business owner buys a new computer, needs it for the business, right?
Yeah.
They use money that hasn't been taxed yet. An employee buys the exact same computer, but they have to use money that's already had taxes taken out.
That's a huge difference in purchasing power right there, just massive. So, okay, I get the cash flow inversion, that's powerful. But what are the actual legal structures people use to make this happen? You said they're not just administrative hurdles, they're tools, right? Financial strategy tools.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah, fundamental tools. We're talking about entities like LLCs, limited liability companies. They give you personal liability protection, which is important. But crucially, they enable something called pass-through taxation.
Pass-through taxation.
Yeah, it means the business profits pass directly to the owner's personal tax return. You avoid double taxation.
Double taxation being?
That's where corporate profits get taxed once at the company level and then taxed again when profits are distributed to shareholders as dividends. LLCs often avoid that. Then you also have things like S corporations. They let owners pay themselves a reasonable salary and then distribute the rest of the profits without those pesky self-employment taxes.
Ah, the ones for Social Security and Medicare if you're self-employed.
Exactly. So smart structuring saves money there too.
Okay, so these structures are the foundation. Makes sense. Beyond just setting up the business entity, how do savvy individuals use investments for tax advantages?
Well, connecting this to the bigger picture, a lot of wealthy individuals strategically invest in assets that come with significant tax advantages built in. Real estate is probably the classic example.
Right, mortgages, property taxes, you can deduct those.
Yes, but the really powerful tool is often depreciation. Now, this is a non-cash expense. It lets owners deduct the theoretical cost of a property wearing out over its useful life, even if the property's market value is actually going up.
Wait, so you can subtract value for tax purposes even if it's gaining value?
Kind of amazing, right? You own a property, it's appreciating. But on your tax return, you're subtracting a chunk of its value each year. This creates a paper loss. It can shield your rental income cash flow from taxes and sometimes even offset income from other sources.
Wow.
And it's not just real estate. You see aggressive incentives in areas like oil and gas exploration too. And it's important to stress, these aren't loopholes, generally speaking. They are deliberate incentives put there by lawmakers to encourage certain kinds of economic activity.
Okay, that's clear. But all of this, well, it inevitably sparks some public debate, doesn't it? You hear figures like Warren Buffett famously arguing about the fairness of it all. He pointed out he often pays a lower effective tax rate than his secretary. That led to talk about things like the Buffett rule.
It does raise an important distinction, and it's crucial. We're talking about tax avoidance. That's the legal use of the tax code to minimize your tax bill. That's very different from tax evasion, which is illegal. Kiyosaki's advice is squarely in the legal avoidance camp.
Got it. Legal versus illegal.
Right. But, some critics do argue that even legal aggressive tax minimization by the very wealthy can impact public services. If the overall tax base shrinks, that's a potential consequence. It's a valid point in the public discussion. But it's also important to maybe present the counter-narrative, especially around something Kiyosaki has sometimes criticized, like 401k plans.
Oh, interesting. What about them?
Well, these plans offer huge advantages for employees. You get pre-tax contributions, so your taxable income is lower now. Your investments grow tax-deferred over decades, and the employer match. That's essentially free money, a guaranteed return, often.
Right. The matching is key.
Absolutely. These are powerful, widely available wealth-building tools. They represent a significant tax advantage for millions, maybe sometimes overlooked when we focus only on business owner strategies.
So wrapping this up,
Yeah.
what does this all mean for you, the listener? It seems like viewing taxes not just as this unavoidable punishment, but as a strategic variable, a rule book you can learn. That seems to be the profound mindset shift.
Exactly. It's a shift the financially savvy definitely embrace. So think about your own financial situation, your cash flow. Could maybe adopting even a small side hustle, perhaps setting up an LLC, change how you pay for some everyday expenses that might qualify? Or, on the other side, how are you really leveraging that immediate return from an employer match in your 401k? Are you getting the full match? These are definitely ideas worth exploring further. Maybe talk to a tax professional, see what specific deductions or structures might actually apply to your situation.
Welcome back to the deep dive. Okay, let's unpack this. Forget the old playbook, just trading time for money. Today, we're cracking open Robert Kiyosaki's Cashflow Quadrant. It's a framework that doesn't just reevaluate how you earn, it really pushes you to redefine what financial freedom actually means. Gaining options, not just chasing a bigger bank account.
Yeah, and what's truly fascinating here, I think, is that this model, it doesn't categorize you by your job title, your profession. It looks at the source of your income, the nature of it. And that, it radically shifts how we think about wealth. Like Thoreau said, right? Wealth is the ability to fully experience life, or Will Rogers, living life on your terms. This framework is kind of a map for figuring out how you can set yourself up to do that.
Exactly. And it breaks things down into 4 key areas, these quadrants. Employee, that's E, self-employed S, then business owner, B, and investor, I. And the big idea, really, for you listening, is understanding that fundamental split between the left side E and S, where you're basically trading time for dollars, and the right side B and I, where ideally your money and your systems are doing the work for you. Okay, so let's dig into these a bit. The left side first. The E quadrant, employee. They value security, right? That steady paycheck. They work in someone else's system.
Right. Security is the key word there.
Then you've got the S quadrant, self-employed. These folks often crave independence. They want to be their own boss. But here's the catch, isn't it? The S often ends up just owning a job, not really a scalable business.
That's the paradox. Exactly. You own a job. Your income, it typically stops the moment you stop working. So despite the autonomy, many S quadrant people are still fundamentally trading hours for dollars. It's active income.
Still tied to time.
Pretty much. Now, if we zoom out a bit, moving from that left side, the E and S, to the right side, the B and I, it's not just about changing how your money comes in. It's a big psychological shift, too.
Okay. How so? Psychological.
Well, it forces you to ask this really important question. Is financial security the same thing as financial freedom? Think about it. You could have, say, a top surgeon, maybe making, $900,000 a year. Incredible security.
Yeah, definitely secure.
But are they free? They're tied to that specific high-skill job, tied to their time. Now compare that to maybe a real estate investor. Let's say they have $110,000 a year coming in passively from rental properties. Lower income, sure.
Much lower, yeah.
But potentially much greater freedom.
Yeah.
Because their assets, their properties, they work, whether the investor is physically there or not, the system works for them.
That's a really powerful contrast. It really hammers home that it's not just how much you make, but how you make it. And a huge piece of that how on the right side seems to be about leverage, right?
Yeah.
Using resources differently.
Precisely. Leverage is key. The right side uses capital, uses debt, even uses the tax code strategically in ways the left side often doesn't or can't.
Yeah.
Most of us are taught debt is bad, avoid debt.
Right, stay out of debt.
But there's a critical difference between bad debt, like credit cards for consumption, and good debt. Good debt is used to acquire assets that generate income. Like, okay, say you have $100,000 cash. You could buy one rental property outright. Maybe it gives you a 9% return, let's say. Or you could take that same $100,000, use it as $5,000, $20,000 down payments on 5 properties. You leverage debt for the rest. Now, if the rents cover the mortgages and expenses, your return on your actual cash invested could jump to, say, 18% or even more.
Wow, doubling the return on your cash just by using debt smartly.
Okay.
And it's not just debt, you mentioned taxes.
Oh, absolutely. The tax system is, well, fundamentally different depending on the quadrant. Earned income from the E and S quadrants, that's typically the highest taxed income there is. Very few deductions available compared to the other side.
So, B&I get better tax treatment.
Generally, yes. Business owners and investors, the B&I folks, they can access a whole range of advantages. Things like the qualified business income deduction, the QBI deduction. That alone can let some deduct up to 20% of their business income right off the top, plus all the standard business expenses. And then there are things like accelerated depreciation, Section 179, tools that let you write off asset purchases much faster. It significantly lowers your taxable income. The system is kind of designed to incentivize people to build businesses, acquire assets, take those entrepreneurial risks.
Okay, this is a lot to take in. So wrapping this up, what does this all mean for you, the listener? This deep dive, it's not just, abstract theory. It feels more like a potential roadmap. And Kiyosaki says the first step is to mind your own business, which doesn't necessarily mean quitting your day job tomorrow, right?
Not at all. It means shifting your focus. Start thinking about and actively building your asset column, even while you have your E or S income. Like that old story, the parable of the pipeline. Are you just carrying buckets of water back and forth, or are you building a pipeline that flows continuously?
Building assets.
Building assets that work for you. And look, the biggest hurdle for most people, it's usually fear. Fear of the unknown, fear of risk. But often, that fear just comes from a lack of financial education.
So the answer is learning.
Exactly. The antidote is get educated. You don't need a PhD. Just dedicate, say, 5 hours a week. Read books. Listen to discussions like this one. Learn about business. Learn about investing. Like Peter Drucker said, the real risk isn't taking the plunge into business or investing. The real risk is operating without understanding.
Right. Makes sense. Okay, let's leave everyone with a final thought to chew on. Something provocative. Consider your 401k or similar retirement plan. Is it truly an investment strategy designed for financial freedom? Or is it mostly a security-focused savings tool that, by its structure, kind of keeps you playing the game on the left side of the quadrant by someone else's rules? Something to mull over. Will catch you on the next deep dive.
Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're getting to a really powerful idea, one you actually shared with us from Rich Dad, Poor Dad. It kind of suggests that the biggest hurdle to financial freedom, well, it isn't just about strategy or, having the cash. It's something much deeper. This really profound psychological fear of losing money.
That's exactly right. And our mission really in this deep dive is to unpack how our brains, maybe surprisingly, are almost wired against building wealth. And then look at how Robert Kiyosaki's ideas challenge us to, actively rewire that thinking. The goal is to give you some actual actionable ways to build up that financial courage.
Okay, let's dive in. So this default setting for so many people, this play not to lose idea, it feels almost backwards for growth, right? What's like fundamentally going on inside our heads that pushes us that way.
Yeah, it's fascinating. It's deeply rooted in something called loss aversion. It's a key idea from prospect theory. Basically, the psychological punch of a loss. It's just way stronger than the pleasure you get from an equivalent gain. Some research suggests losses can feel like twice as bad. Our brains can even react to the idea of losing money like it's a physical danger, lighting up primitive parts like the amygdala.
Wow. Okay, so this wiring, this old brain response, it can actually push us into making really irrational money moves, like, holding on to investments, tanking way too long, or just avoiding investing completely. That's a huge thing to fight against. Like Henry Ford said, right? One who fears failure limits his activities.
Precisely. And that's where the whole rich dad philosophy comes in. It radically reframes failure. Kiyosaki puts it bluntly, winners are not afraid of losing. Failure is part of the process of success.
Yeah.
His argument is simple. We learn by doing, by trial and error. Just like learning to walk, you fall down, you get back up.
Right. And he has that Texas mentality idea, kind of like remember the Alamo, transform defeat into fuel. So those financial losses, they're not failures, they're tuition.
Yeah.
You're paying for real-world financial smarts, not something to hide.
Exactly, tuition. And to really get this, it helps to look at some real history, examples where this really played out.
Oh, for sure. Like Thomas Edison. Right.
Yeah.
Famously going through 10,000 ways that don't work for the light bulb.
Right.
Or Henry Ford, his first two car companies went belly up.
Right.
Steve Jobs got kicked out of Apple before the big comeback, obviously. Even Jeff Bezos, Amazon had some pretty expensive mistakes early on. What these examples show, I think, is that embracing that failure tuition, well, that was the fuel for their huge successes later. learning from loss, not just avoiding it.
And this leads to a really key distinction Kiyosaki makes. He says, it is not gambling if you know what you're doing. It is gambling if you're just throwing money into a deal and praying. So the difference is knowledge, strategy. Think about a pro poker player versus someone just buying lottery tickets. One understands odds and risk, the other is pure hope.
Okay, so how do you do that? Is there a tool?
Well, one practical approach is thinking in terms of a risk-reward ratio.
Ah,
So say you risk $1 for a potential gain of $3. That's a 1-to-3 ratio. With that, you could actually be wrong 3 out of 4 times and still basically break even.
right. So it lets you absorb those smaller hits.
Exactly. It lets you make calculated bets, handle the small L's, knowing the wins, when they happen, are much bigger.
Okay, but we need some balance here, don't we? Because it sounds a bit like just take risks.
Absolutely. It's really important to talk about survivorship bias. We hear all about the successful risk takers, right? But thousands fail, and we never hear their stories. Kiyosaki himself, he has a very high tolerance for risk. He's even gone through bankruptcies. That's pretty extreme. It's his path, not necessarily a blueprint for everyone.
That's a really important point. So if Kiyosaki's own story involves bankruptcies and this high-risk approach, isn't for everyone. And the book itself can be a bit fuzzy on the how-to for managing risk, especially with maybe riskier stuff.
Yeah.
How can you practically approach this?
Well, it really comes down to knowing yourself and taking steps incrementally. Kiyosaki gives you the mindset shift, the permission to fail, almost. But you have to build your own framework for risk, your own comfort level with risk. It's deeply personal. It's not one size fits all. Figuring that out is step one in managing what the book maybe leaves a little vague.
Okay, so pulling this all together, if just getting rid of fear isn't really the point, what's the big takeaway? What's the actionable lesson here for you listening? How do we turn all this into real financial courage?
Yeah, the core lesson isn't no fear. That's impossible. Probably unhealthy. It's about managing it with knowledge, with a resilient attitude, and disciplined ways of handling risk. Real financial courage means taking those deliberate, calculated actions even when you feel the fear. So, practical steps. First, maybe audit your financial biases. Try to see where emotion is driving things instead of logic. Then you got to build your risk muscle, but do it incrementally. Small, controlled investments where you understand the potential downside. And finally, maybe create a failure journal. Seriously, write down what went wrong, what you learned, turn every loss into a permanent lesson.
A failure journal. I actually love that. It makes it sound like science, right? Like a researcher noting down every experiment, especially the failed ones, because they all teach you something to the final breakthrough. It totally flips how you see setbacks. So here's something to think about. What small calculated risk have you been putting off, maybe just because you're afraid? And what valuable lesson might be waiting for you on the other side if you took it?
Welcome to the deep dive. We take your sources, give you the insights. Today, we're really digging into a big idea from Robert Kiyosaki. The one that says financial freedom, it's not a solo mission, it's actually collaborative. Yeah, it kind of flies in the face of that whole lone genius myth, doesn't it? Our mission today is simple. Unpack why building a strategic financial team isn't some luxury. It's actually fundamental for your success. We're using Kiyosaki's The Power of Networking, building your team, plus some academic research and some pretty interesting historical bits, too. Okay, so that lone genius is myth, it's everywhere. What is it about that idea, especially in finance, that Kiyosaki sees as, dangerous for regular people trying to build wealth?
Well, it's dangerous mainly because it's just not realistic. I mean, think about it. Who can possibly master everything you need for real financial success? We're talking investing, tax law, legal stuff, business management. It's a huge range. Kiyosaki's rich dad view is really clear on this. Real wealth comes from smart collaboration. It's about leveraging other people's specific talents, their expertise. Trying to do it all yourself, you're probably leaving money or at least big opportunities, just sitting there.
Right. And the cost of ignoring that.
Yeah.
It's not just, say, the fees you might pay an advisor. It's the hidden cost, isn't it? The cost of what you don't know.
Precisely. And those costs are, frankly, staggering. The data shows Americans collectively lose hundreds of billions every year just from not having enough financial knowledge. It averages out to over $1,000 per person per year. And that doesn't even touch the constant stress, the missed chances. Plus, we all have these psychological traps we fall into. Like overconfidence, right? You're good at your job, so you think you'll be a great investor. Not always true. Or recency bias, chasing whatever did well last month. Terrible timing, usually. And loss aversion, that panic selling when the market dips just a little. A good team. They act like an objective buffer against all that. They bring data, perspective, a steady hand when things get choppy. And then there are the tangible things you miss out on. Tax mistakes, like not using tax loss harvesting, or not being diversified enough, or missing out completely on things like private equity, those bigger institutional deals.
Okay, so it sounds like having a team is really crucial then, but how exactly does working together give you that leverage, especially with complex money decisions?
Yeah, leverage is the key word. A team gives you leverage because you're using, as Kiyosaki puts it, other people's talents, expertise, and experience.
Oh.
There's actually research on this concept called social capital, basically, the value in your network. And it shows a really strong link to success, especially for entrepreneurs. Sometimes social capital is even more important than financial capital. Think of your team like a personal board of directors. It's not hierarchical, it's peer-based. They bring different views, cover your blind spots, and give you that honest feedback you need. They see stuff you just won't see on your own.
That sounds incredibly powerful, but does it actually work like that in the real world? Got any historical examples?
Oh, absolutely. History's full of them. Andrew Carnegie, for example. He built an empire, but not alone. He had a network of really skilled managers running things, which freed him up for the big picture, the strategy. Now, his later falling out with Henry Clay Frick, that's a big warning sign, right? Shows how vital shared ethics and trust are. You need character alignment. Then look at Warren Buffett. He openly credits Charlie Munger as the, quote, architect of how Berkshire Hathaway works today. That partnership is built on totally complementary skills and just deep, deep mutual trust. And Steve Jobs himself said it. Great things in business are never done by one person. They're done by a team of people. Simple as that.
Okay, but I hear people thinking, a whole team of experts. I can't afford that right now. And that's fair. It feels like a big hurdle.
It does, but it's a journey, right? You don't start with a massive team. You build it progressively. So tier 1, no cost or low cost. Start simple. Find an accountability partner, someone you trust to check in with. Use the free resources out there. Brokers like Schwab or Fidelity have tons of educational stuff. Governing agencies like the CFPB Consumer Financial Protection Bureau have good info too. Even budgeting apps, you could argue, are like non-human team members helping you track things. Then, as you grow, maybe that's tier 2. You could hire a fee-only planner for just a few hours on a specific question. Or use a robo-advisor for basic automated investing. They're pretty low cost now. Think about alternatives for the key roles. Maybe you can't afford a top CFP right away, but a robo-advisor gets you started. Instead of a lawyer for everything, maybe an online legal service works for simple stuff, tax software instead of a CPA initially. The really important thing with networking, though, is giving value first. Don't just ask, ask, ask. Build that credibility. Build that trust.
That really drives it home. Financial success isn't just about being smart yourself. It's about being smart enough to build that support system around you, sort of becoming the architect of your own network, one that makes your own financial intelligence way more powerful.
Exactly. And maybe here's something for you, the listener, to think about. A little exercise. Create your own financial statement of expertise. What does that mean? Just identify, say, the top 3 areas of finance or business where you feel you know the least, your biggest knowledge gaps. Then, for each gap, find just one professional or even just one good resource you could connect with to start filling it. And remember that key point. When you reach out, try to find a way to offer them some value first without expecting anything back immediately. Start by giving. Welcome to the Deep Dive. You know, we often think a big salary is the key to getting rich. But what if that's not quite right?
Exactly. Our sources today, drawing a lot from philosophies like Rich Dad, Poor Dad, suggest it's much less about the paycheck size and way more about your mindset.
Mindset, okay.
Yeah, specifically 2 big ideas. The discipline to pay yourself first and committing to learning about money your whole life.
Got it. So our mission here is to kind of unpack that financial mind, what makes it tick. We want to give you a really solid, quick grasp of how wealthy people think and act. All right, let's start with paying yourself first.
Yeah.
We've probably all heard the phrase, but what does it really mean in practice?
Well, it's pretty radical, actually. It means your savings, your investments, that's priority number 1. Like the most important bill you pay, not just scraping up leftovers at the end of the month.
So it's a mindset shift.
Totally. And psychologically, it's smart. It gets around our tendency to want stuff now. You know what academics call hyperbolic discounting.
Ah, right. Like wanting 1 marshmallow now instead of 2 later.
Precisely. By making that payment to yourself automatic or just non-negotiable, you're basically setting up your system to favor the long game. You sidestep that daily willpower battle.
And there are real stories behind this. Get this. Theodore Johnson. UPS driver. Never made more than, what, $14,000 a year?
Yeah, something like that. Unbelievable story.
And yet he built up over $70 million
Yeah.
by saving 20% consistently for, like, 50 years. He called it his own personal tax.
He paid himself that tax first, religiously. It really hammers home that this isn't just for high earners. Discipline is key.
Okay, so discipline is one piece, but you also mentioned knowledge. Our sources seem to argue that traditional schooling often misses the mark on financial intelligence.
Yeah, that's a big theme. The idea is that school often trains you to be a good employee, get a job, but maybe not how to actually build wealth or understand the system, sometimes called the rat race.
Right. So what's the alternative? This financial intelligence.
It boils down to understanding things like basic accounting, investing principles, and crucially, the difference between an asset, something putting money in your pocket, and a liability, which takes money out.
Okay. Assets good, liabilities bad. Sounds simple.
Simple concept, but understanding it deeply changes everything. This knowledge, it's like an asset itself. It compounds, gives you more options, helps you adapt, especially now with tech changing everything, new things like crypto.
That makes sense. Like Warren Buffett spending hours reading every day. It's not just a hobby.
Exactly. His quote, "The best investment you can make is an investment in yourself."
That's it right there. Constantly learning helps you think for yourself, make better long-term calls.
Okay, but let's be real. The rich dad, poor dad ideas get some pushback, right? People say it's too simple, or it doesn't give you concrete how-to steps for investing.
That's fair criticism. You hear it a lot. But maybe the point wasn't to be a step-by-step guide.
What was it then? Maybe more of a mindset shifter, a provocateur, something to shake up your standard beliefs about money and encourage you to learn by actually doing things, even making mistakes along the way.
Okay, so challenging assumptions. One huge area of debate is debt. Kiyosaki seems okay with some debt, while someone like Dave Ramsey says basically all debt is terrible. How do those fit?
The debt debate, yeah.
Yeah.
Kiyosaki draws a line. He talks about good debt versus bad debt.
Good debt, like what?
That you take on to buy something that makes you money, like leveraging borrowed money for a rental property that generates cash flow. That's good debt in his view. Bad debt, well, for consumer stuff, cars, TVs, vacations, stuff that loses value or costs you money.
And Ramsey just says avoid it all.
Pretty much. His focus is on getting people out of the hole, especially that crushing consumer debt. And honestly, these views aren't necessarily opposites.
How so?
You could see Ramsey's approach as perfect for stage one, digging out of consumer debt. Absolutely vital for many people. Kiyosaki's ideas about using leverage, the good debt, that might be more for stage two once you're debt-free and looking to accelerate wealth building.
So different tools for different stages. Makes sense.
Yeah.
That probably explains why they see home ownership differently too, right? Kiyosaki sometimes calls a primary home a liability.
Exactly. Because of the mortgage, taxes, upkeep in pocket, it takes money out of your pocket monthly unless you're renting part of it out or something. Conventional wisdom sees it as an asset because it appreciates, usually. Different perspectives again.
Okay, pulling this all together then.
Yeah, at the end of the day, this financial mind we're talking about, it seems to be this blend. It's self-discipline, like paying yourself first, combined with that ongoing financial education.
So it's not just what to think, but how.
Precisely. It's about questioning the norms, always learning, and then having the discipline to act on what you learn.
So here's something for you listening to think about. What's one common money belief you hold that maybe, just maybe, deserves a second look after hearing this?
Or maybe simpler. Could you carve out just 15 minutes a day to build that financial knowledge asset? Think about where that could lead.
That's all for this episode of the Deep Dive Cast. Thanks for joining us. We hope you gained some valuable insights. Be sure to tune in next time for another deep dive into the world's best ideas. Until then, keep learning and growing.